Rishi Sunak has ruled out, all but ruled out, we should say, a May election. Says that his working assumption is going to be in the second half of the year. So we judge that to mean autumn, really. I mean, the question stalking Westminster, really, since Rishi Sunak confirmed an election will be this year, has been the question of when. It's been on everybody's lips, and two schools of thought have really emerged. One is that he would go early in the spring, potentially cutting any losses that he could get from the local elections, which potentially would be pretty bruising for the Prime Minister and the Conservative Party, and would really sort of contribute and feed into that defeatist narrative heading into a polling day. But what it looks like it's going to go is autumn instead. And so by doing that, he hopes that something will come down the tracks for him, whether it's more economic progress or more work to do stopping the boats. And also he can sort of ratchet up that 2 years in number 10 under his belt, which I think he wants, and it gets him more known to the public. And so it's fairly unusual for party leaders to say exactly when they're going to hold an election, and he hasn't set a firm date. Although I think why he did this is he's really trying to neutralise those Labour attacks. Inevitably, they've been talking up the prospect of a May election, because it means that when he doesn't hold an election in May, they can then go, he's bottled it. He's a weak prime minister. And some readers might remember back in 2007 when Gordon Brown was prime minister, he just became elected. And he didn't call that election in 2007 and let the whole narrative build up. And when he didn't call it, the Tories very quickly weaponized him bottling it. And it really sort of dealt a fatal blow to Gordon Brown back then. So I think that strategically for Rishi Sunak, he's probably done the right thing today by snuffing out any speculation of an election anytime soon.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year. And in the meantime, I've got lots that I want to get on with. This Saturday, we'll be introducing a significant tax cut for millions of people in work, worth on average £450 for an average worker. Because we've halved inflation, we want to keep managing the economy well and cutting people's taxes. And I want to keep tackling illegal migration.
Rishi Sunak out there speaking to Red Wall voters today, but he would know exactly what he was doing by snuffing out any speculation of an early election, essentially ruling that out. We know that Rishi Sunak's preferred forums now are these sort of fireside chats with voters rather than set-piece speeches. His aides believe that he is more natural in those environments. And what is interesting today, in fact, that he was making this announcement essentially on the anniversary of those 5 pledges, which is why he's been doing this today. You know, those 5 pledges he made in January 2023, which he's really sort of staked his premiership on. Now, obviously, he's managed to hit that inflation target, halving inflation in 2023. The other ones remain more questionable. Although Rishi Sunak was pretty defiant today and said that actually he is making great progress on there, admitting that 2023 hasn't been the easiest year for the country. He cited foreign wars in Ukraine and Gaza, obviously making it a tricky situation, but also obviously still the hangover of COVID, which he says, and paying off those debts. But he's optimistic. He struck an optimistic note saying that 2024 will be better. And I think that he has to really counter that decline from the decliner's narrative from Keir Starmer, who also is making a rival speech today, essentially saying that the country has been pushed onto those rocks of decline and that we are in an economic doldrums. Rishi Sunak, if he wants to stand any chance of winning the next election, and he's still 18 points behind in the polls, has to really give people a vision to vote for the Tories in what will be their 5th election win if they manage to pull off the unthinkable later this year. And so, obviously, strategically for Rishi Sunak, it's good that he managed to snuff out those election prospects, but also really sort of sapped the attention away from Keir Starmer today, didn't he? Keir Starmer making his big New Year's speech, laying out his election stall for the country. And I think the headlines probably won't be about Keir Starmer going into tomorrow's newspapers, but probably more about Rishi Sunak and that election.
What used to be their strength is now their weakness. The so-called party of business, which now hates business, that boasts about tax cuts while raising taxes higher than at any time since the war. That claim, even now, to be the party of sound finance, but that crashed the economy and made you pay.
And what we didn't get today is any new policy announcements from Keir Starmer. What we did get at the end was a lot of questions about exactly how he was going to pay for all the policies which he has announced. And so we know there's that £28 billion a year splurge on green investment, which he has been touting quite heavily. Now, he says he doesn't want the tax burden to rise any more, apart from a few tax changes to VAT on private schools really and taxing non-doms. But in terms of the overall impact on working families, he's been very coy about any particular tax rises which he could lump on the British people if he were to become Prime Minister. And today he didn't rule out keeping the freeze on thresholds, tax thresholds especially, which he's been clobbering the Tories for. So he has said the Tories stealth tax rises by not unfreezing the income tax thresholds, which hits millions of working people up and down the country, are wrong. But when asked on it directly, wouldn't say that he would unfreeze it. And so it's these types of policies which, going into that election next year, the spotlight is going to be on them. And for Keir Starmer, who is an aspiring Prime Minister, he really now has to step up to the plate and explain to the British public how he's going to pay for them and whether he will contribute to tax rises.